Hello, this is Paolo, and welcome to the 8th installment of the Blender Survival Guide, the dedicated guide for the motion graphic artist who wants to use Blender. Last time we finished with our model of the book. We didn't have enough time to create a rendering. It was already pretty long as tutorials go. And so this time we're going to see how to produce the promo. The publisher is calling, he's saying, hey, where is my promo? Get back to work. Okay, so we want to create a couple of camera movements. Nothing fancy. We don't have the time to be fancy. So let's see how it's done. All right, first of all, let's find our camera right here. No, this one. Perfect. Let's zoom in a little bit. Now, first of all, we saw this gizmo here, this manipulator in previous videos, and we saw that the manipulator is activated by this toolbar here. So we can enable, disable it, and we can enable different types of manipulator. This is the translate manipulator. Gotta love the geometry jargon. It's translate, not as in converting from Italian to English, for example, but moving from one location to the other, okay? So this is what translate does. Then there is the rotate gizmo, of course, allows us to change the angle of the camera. And we know that we can mix them together and so on. Okay. Right now, if I look at the scene from my top view, I can move the camera using the G button, for example. And in this case, you know, I can move it freely. G button. It's the G key. Okay. Anyway, but this is not always optimal. I'd like to use these gizmos here, but they are oriented in the wrong direction. Ideally, I'd like to have this green axis going through the middle line of the camera. Well, here is the control. Now, the more attentive of you have probably noticed this global pull-down menu, which is the orientation menu. Well, global means exactly this. The gizmo, the manipulator, is oriented in the world view. Basically, the world is showing us this axis here for the Y, and this red line for the X-axis, and now we see that the manipulator is oriented in exactly the same way. That's what global means. Well, if we select local instead, now we see the manipulator being oriented for the object. Now we can take this arrow and move the camera in the direction we want. All right. So I like to create a nice little opening shot with the book in this position, the camera pulling a little bit, maybe changing the orientation just a little bit. But I want to accentuate the 3D effect of the book. So let's take a look at these camera parameters. I'm going to click here in the editing button, and you know, 35 millimeter for the lens is okay, but I think we can go for something a little more dramatic, kind of a wide angle lens. So let's try something around 20. Okay, 20 is giving me a wider field of view so that I can come closer to my object, and the 3D effect is kind of exaggerated, which is good. And you know, I want to end up pretty much like this so I can read the title very well. Okay, so I have a very specific type of music in mind for the opening shot. This kind of looks like a monolith. Hint, hint. So with that in mind, and the fact that I pre-screened the music before starting this tutorial, I know I need about 8 seconds, 9 seconds of opening shot. So let's do this. Let's move the camera all the way here. And you know what? I'm gonna remove this preview window so that I can have a little better response time. And so this is gonna be our opening shot. And first of all, let's change the name of this camera. Camera becomes Cam A, because we're gonna have probably 2 or 3 different cameras. And I'm gonna record the keyframe at this location. So I press I, select lock rot for location and rotation. And now I have a keyframe here at frame 0, actually frame 1. And if we move the cursor, the indicator, I can see the keyframe. Good. So about 8.5 or 9 seconds. Now here in the timeline, we have a time indicator. What kind of time indicator is this? Well, if you press T, you can select to show the values in frames or seconds. So let's select seconds. All right. So let's move to about, 9 seconds. Okay. And I want to do this push in this way. But before I do this, I know that if I just create a keyframe at 9 seconds, it will be a kind of a progressive, almost linear movement. And I want to hold for 1.5 seconds a little more in the same location. So here, I'm going to create another keyframe with exactly, well, maybe not exactly. Let's pull this a little closer, but just barely. Okay. And then press I, lock rot. Okay. Then I move the indicator, the time indicator at 9. And here, I'm going to move the camera closer to our book. Perfect. Another keyframe. So now we can go back to the beginning and play back. Okay. But will it play at exactly the right time? Well, let's find out. All right. We never mentioned this before, but Blender actually has a little NLE built in, a Nonlinear Editor. Nothing spectacular. Don't give up on your copy of Final Cut or Premiere yet, but very, very good tool to use in some situations. So right now, I'd love to hear the music going together with this animation. So let's do this. Let me just split this view. Okay, so if we bring this up and right-click, split area. Now we're in the wrong direction, but we do like we learned before. Middle click of the mouse. Okay, now we have the right orientation. The timeline doesn't really need much space. It just needs enough for us to see the cursor, the indicator. In this window here, I'm going to select the Video Sequence Editor. This is our NLE. And I press Shift down arrow to go at the first frame. So here we see our frame indicator. But this is kind of our layer system, the same that you have in After Effects or Premiere. So what I want to do here is to add my soundtrack. So we click on Add, and we select Audio HD. And yeah, the file system opens, of course, in this window. That's kind of weird. Anyway, we go to the location where I have my file. In this case, it's episode 8. and I have this nice piece of music. You recognize the title, I hope. And usually it's here it is. I press home to see where it was located. And so this is our sound strip. And I don't know why it went here, but I don't care right now. So I'm gonna just press G. Blender's user interface is perfectly consistent. So I press G and I can move this strip down, and I'm gonna move it to this point here. And now let's rearrange a little bit the screen. We don't need this much. We don't need this much. We definitely need this framing better. All right, what is gonna happen now? Oh. Well, why stop so quickly? The default scene in Blender has 250 frames. So if we click on the scene here, we see, in fact, that it starts at 1 and ends at 250. Now, if I press T here in my video editor, I can select my frames and seconds as well. So I go to frames. Now if I move the time indicator here in the timeline, which is in seconds, so now I can have both. Isn't that great? So now I'm 9 seconds. I can see that this is, let's zoom in a little bit, at about 210 frames, 200. So here, this ends at 250 just at the end of our animation. So we want to get a little more, 400 for example. Let's see what happens here. 400 and rewind, Alt A. There's a lot of that low rumbling noise we don't really need. We can start a little sooner. But that's nice. Okay, so I think probably we can lower this around 350. And if we go here, okay, zoom in with our scroll key and zoom too much. All right, so let's move this a few frames down. Now you see an indicator of a frame number. There it's -10, -11, -12. I think it probably, at least a second would be nice. Let's try this. See when the music starts at this point. Still too much. So let's move again. A little more. That's better. Boom, 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 boom. Good. All right. Let's save this scene at this point. File, save as, and I'm going to go to episode 8, and we're going to call it BSG 8, the Blender Survival Guide. Okay. So now we have our first opening shot, and we have the music. We are feeling pretty good at this point. Well, before we continue, though, I'd like to verify the result up to this point. So let me do a quick render of the scene. This is with the camera at the first frame. Okay, and let's move the time indicator down to the end of our animation. It looks okay, but the book basically is in the middle of nowhere, of nothing. And that is just not right. we have this dramatic soundtrack. Well, let's have a little more of a dramatic setting. We need a floor. So let's switch to this view, top view, and I need a floor in the middle of our scene. Now let's press Shift C, which positions the 3D cursor at the origin of the world and centers the scene. Now with a 3D cursor in the right position, let's verify it on this side here. Perfect. It's right there at the origin. So I press Shift A, add plane. It's a teeny tiny plane, but we can scale it. Okay. And I'm going to look in the camera perspective to see how far the floor extends. Okay. And now, let's see what we have. Kinda okay, but that really looks dull. Okay, so we have our floor. It's selected. Let's go to the shading window and add a new material. Let's call it floor. And I'm gonna give it a very nice dark blue. Let's see, like this. Okay. And let's move to the mirror and transparency tab, and click on ray mirror, which means that I want a mirroring surface, and I have to use ray tracing. So this will slow down our rendering considerably, but for now, let's see how it works. So I'm gonna move my value for the ray mirroring. Okay, so now we have our mirror. It's about 0.2. Let's see how that works. Ooh, isn't this nice? I know that you can create this effect in After Effects with some free plugins, but sometimes there's nothing like the real thing. And we're doing it inside Blender. It's important to know how it works. Okay, I like this, and I think I might just need to move the book up a little bit, even if it floats above the floor. It wouldn't be a bad look, not at all. I like it. I like it that way. Okay, so now we have our setup correct, and you know what? I'm gonna just move this floor out of the way for a while because it will just get in the way of doing the other work. So I press M with the floor selected and I move it to a new layer number 2. Okay, let's save our scene at this point. Good. So let's create the second part of the animation, and I'm gonna move in this view here, and let's see, I want a camera in the back of the book here, and I'm gonna just press Shift A, add a new camera. There is the camera, and I'm gonna change the name, call it Cam B. Okay, and now let's see it from the side. Okay, the camera is basically pointing down below the floor, not a good position, so we're gonna bring it up a little bit and rotate in this direction and then rotate it in this direction. So now we have the camera pointing in the right direction, and I'm gonna switch view. I'm gonna click on view here, select cameras, and click on Cam B. All right, and that gave us a little bit of a dramatic animation, and move my view here to be looking from the top, and reposition my camera. Okay, maybe a little back. Okay, and oh, one thing I forgot. This camera is probably back to the default, so we want to match the same settings we had on camera A. And so we click on the editing buttons and change the lens to 20 millimeters. I think that was what we had for camera A. So let me click on camera A. Yeah, 20 millimeters, 20 millimeters. Okay, so now we have a different frame. We can bring the camera a little closer. And we're going to start from frame 217, which is, well, let's start from 216. So we have just one frame overlap. And we want to tilt up like this. All right. So let's see what we have here. Let's do a quick render. All right. It's the bottom of the book. Looks correct. We still need our floor. We'll add that at the last minute. So in this way, we can do quick renders without wasting time with a ray tracing and the mirror. Okay. So we are frame 217 and we are selecting camera B and we press I, lock rod. And then let's think about another 8-9 seconds. So let me switch time value here. And this is 9, so we're going to move at 18 seconds. Oh, let's see. There you go. Right here. And move our camera. Or maybe just a little. Hold on a second. Let's just do something a little faster. 16 seconds. And move the camera up. Maybe tilt it a little bit at this point. Like this. So reframe it. Let's take a look at this. Open your mind to the possibilities. Wonderful. And keyframe it. Now we want to try it and see how it works. Now up to here. Okay. And then 16. 16. Let me switch to frames. So we are at frame 384. I'm going to move forward 1, 2, and 3 frames. And then move the camera back down so that I can frame the entire book. It's gonna be a very, very quick move. All right. Lock rod. And at this point, we are here and boom. We move here. Good. Let's see how it works. And you know what? At this point, I can start rendering my images. So let me save my file. And let me switch to my camera A. Okay. And here I have my beginning and end of animation. I know that I want to go up to frame 216. So I'm going to change the parameters for our rendering to 216. And start setting the location for our output. So we'll click on the folder here. So I have a subdirectory called render, and I have two subdirectories called cam A and cam B. So cam A, and we say cam A underscore pound dot png. That is going to be the name of our file sequence. Select output pictures. Here we have it. And I want to also have a pre-multiply so that I don't render the sky, even though I can remove the sky. I'm going to just use pre-multiply. It's generally the best option. And I'm using 1280 by 720, RGBA. It's all good. And I'm going to click on 100% and do an animation. Oh, we don't have our floor, so let's stop it. And I'm going to shift click on our second layer. Now we have the floor. Again, we try the animation rendering. And here is our floor. Isn't that just beautiful? Okay, so no need to make you wait until the digital paint dries, and I'll fast forward from this point until the end of our rendering. See you there. And here we are with our last frame. Okay, so now we have saved our first part of the shot. We have our music. Let's see about the second camera deal. Well, we just have to basically switch to our camera view. So we go to Cam B. All right, that's where we are. And let's change our parameters for the rendering. So here we are starting from frame 216 and we end at about 400 just to give us a little more room. Okay. And we need to change the location for our render files. So we click on this, we go on Cam B, and select cam.b.png, select output pictures, and do another rendering. Here we go. Okay, so we have our back of the book, and again, I'll let it go until it gets to the end, and I'll see you at that point. And here we are at the final shot, final frame, and let's see how we can put all this together. I'm gonna use After Effects, and before I do that, I need to do a little cleanup. So I'm going to switch to our Cam A, and I'm going to change the name of the camera. Let me select it first to cama.mgx. This is required for the export to After Effects. If you haven't seen my video about the After Effects exporter for Blender, please take a look at that. It's available at the Creative Cow as well. All right, and before we do that, though, I need to revert back to our rendering settings with Cam A here, because the exporter will take some defaults, and I want to start directly with the opening shot. It will make the whole work a lot easier, and yeah, we're gonna just start from frame 1 to 400. All right, at this point we have all the elements together. Let's do an export. File, export, After Effects, and I'm gonna call it BSG08 JSX. That's perfectly fine, in the same directory. Let's click on it, and it's done. Okay, so let's switch to After Effects. And I select File, Scripts, Run Script File. And I have here my file that we just created. This dialog box is enormous. Anyway, click on Open. And just in a few seconds, the import will be done, and we shall see our footage ready in our frame here. Okay, and here we have our comp BSG08. Looks good. So let's double click on it, and here we have our combine render, which is here, in our camera. So let me just fit this in the frame and do a quick RAM preview. Looking good. Okay, and let's add our music. Bring in the comp, and let me see. I'm gonna just move the music a little bit so that we remove part of the beginning. And of course, we want to have a fade in. So combine render, we press T for transparency, click on the stopwatch, so 0, and let's see, we're gonna go 1.5 seconds ahead, and bring back to 100, and I'm actually gonna move this layer a little bit. There you go. Let's see how that works. RAM preview. Okay, time to add the other piece of footage at this point. Import, and we're gonna go to Cam B and click on the first one here, and be sure the ping sequence is marked. And now we have our other sequence, and let's move it here, shift it, and do another preview. Okay, you get the gist of it. This is pretty cool. Now with the exporter, we were able to do a quick integration of After Effects. Now, one of the things we can take advantage of this is that now with the import, we didn't just import the footage, but we do have our camera. So in this case, for example, one of the things I can do is to add some text, and I can click here, and I'm gonna just type something like quote, a masterpiece, and that we attribute that quote to the Blender review. And well, let's change the color of this text to just our standard white, and maybe we can change this to Arial narrow and italics, and we're gonna change this layer to 3D, and it fits. So we're gonna just make the layer a little bigger, move it in position, and of course we need to give it a little bit of fade in as we did for the other layer, which is very simple. We just click on opacity, copy it, paste it, and let's move it down here. And now our text moves, and we can just fade it here. So another keyframe, move ahead, fade it away, and now we can try and looking good. Okay, Let's see how he plays. Come on. And of course, you can continue it with this 3D element that fits your camera basically for free with a simple rotate, and you can actually, instead of rotate, we can move it some other place up in here, and you can rotate it any way you want it, so it doesn't have to fit, the angle of the book. Can be positioned in this way, kind of like that. And of course, it will again fit the camera, move away, and continue. So, a handful of other useful techniques. Keep in mind that we have rendered this with an alpha channel. And so this background here is totally available to be replaced in After Effects. So this gives you a lot of freedom. You get the floor and the reflection for free, and then you can work on the background adding any other layer. We can add, I don't know, something like this. This doesn't really work, but just to give you an idea. Of course, it's way too bright. But anyway, the concept there is that you get your background if you want, so you can continue to work in After Effects, have a lot of flexibility while keeping the key elements available. We have created a presentation for a book. We have seen a little bit of how to integrate the music in Blender. I'm Paolo Ciccone. I hope this was helpful. I'll see you next video. Have fun.